What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another brand new installment of For the Love of Wrestling. I am, of course, your host, the Renegade of Wrestling, JJ Williams. Happy Monday. It has been a long weekend, a lot of wrestling content, and we're here to talk about it. We've got Rampage, we've got Smackdown, we've got Collision, and we have Battle of the Belts 9 today that we're all going to take a look at. So let us get right down into it. Rampage kicked off with Eddie Kingston versus Wheeler Yuta for the AEW Continental Crown. And this was honestly one of the best matches I have ever seen from Eddie Kingston. Tremendous action, and Yuta really seemed like he might pull it off. But much like last week, this is only Eddie's second defense of the title. Way too early for him to lose it. Got the victory, retained his title, but all in all, just a stellar match between both guys. It might be that I enjoyed this match so much because I do enjoy Wheeler Yuta, if I'm giving the devil his due. But like I said, this is probably one of the best matches I've ever seen from Eddie Kingston. We then had Renee Paquette backstage with Mark Briscoe and the Hardys, talking about coming together last week and popping the ratings. And could there possibly be Trios Gold in their future? We'll have to see down the road. The Mogul Embassy have the Ring of Honor titles. The Acclaimed have the AEW titles. So just kind of a matter of which ones they feel like they could go after the best. Swerve Strickland versus Matt Sydal was up next, and this was a good showing by Sydal. But at the end of the day, this was a glorified squash match. I felt really bad for Matt Sydal here. I think he deserves better. You know, were there not enough guys on the AEW roster that Swerve could have had a squash match without hurting somebody with the name recognition of a Matt Sydal? I'm just throwing it out there. I'm asking. Let me know, y'all, for real. We then went backstage and had Renee with Top Flight and Action Andretti. Private Party kind of crashed the interview and said that any two of them can get it anytime, anywhere. So sounds like an open challenge, maybe for Rampage next week, Collision next week, somewhere down the road. Definitely going to have to see how this rivalry develops. Queen Aminata versus Hikaru Shida was up next, and this was a damn good women's match. Again, Tony Khan and AEW have a good women's division. They just need to book it better. Let's see here. There are a few different instances where I thought that Aminata was going to pull this off. Even Shida's Falcon Arrow didn't do the trick right off the bat. But at the end of the day, Shida was able to pick up the victory and vanquish the Queen. We then had Renee, Saraya, and Ruby Soho backstage. And Saraya shows Ruby a video of Cool Hand Angelo Parker kissing Harley Cameron. Ange comes in to try to give Ruby a birthday cake, and Ruby smashes it in his face. So hopefully that's not the complete end of that love story, and we can, kind of get back to it, have them find out that Saraya has been setting them up all along. But unfortunately, I have a feeling that's going to be the end of that. Big G in the house. Michael Vasquez stopping by. Good to see everyone. Main event was the Dark Order versus Jake Hager, Daddy Magic, and Cool Hand Ange. And considering this was right after that segment, Ange was literally wrestling with like cake on his face and shirt. It was hilarious. Dark Order got the victory here thanks to -1 making an appearance. Again, furthering the Brody Lee tributes inside of Daly's place. You had Preston Vance win, you had Anna Jay win, you had the Dark Order win, you had -1 get involved. I did touch on this last week when I reviewed Dynamite. I feel like they leaned too heavily into the Brody Lee storylines with this showing at Daly's place, but it was still fun. I mean, you knew that 2.0 or the JAS, whatever you want to call them, excuse me, you knew they weren't going to get the solid victory. So it was a matter of how could they get, who could they put over? The Dark Order, essentially jobbers at this point as well. So some jobber team has to win. You throw -1 into the mix, who has Jake Hager's hat, furthering that all around. So Jake Hager is now distracted by the fact that his hat is in play. Made for some good comedy here. All in all, Rampage was a fun show. And I'd probably give it a C+ just because it was an hour and it was predictable, but the action was still really good. Quick commercial break. Show you where you can find the Friends of the Jeff Meacham Network, and then we're going to come right back and we're going to get into Smackdown. Stay tuned. So that is where you can find everybody associated with the Jeff Meacham Network Multiversa Media, whether it's James Hebert, Noah Foster, Big Baller G, who's in the comments, Cleveland combatant Josh Mansfield, No DQ, our buddy Datilla from the Rangers of Wrestling, who was on the ground at Hard to Kill and Snake Eyes this weekend for the relaunch of TNA. I know she's going to have a lot to say and talk about it over on her channel. Hopefully she'll have a video going live about it soon. But everybody associated with us, that's where you can find them all. Moving on to SmackDown, Grayson Waller versus Cameron Grimes was supposed to be our first match. And as Cameron Grimes is coming out, the Bloodline attack him and just go full bore on him, take him out, Samoan Spike. Heyman then cuts a promo stating that the Bloodline are not the bad guys. Nick Aldis is. It's because of Nick Aldis that your tribal chief has to take on Randy Orton, AJ Styles, and LA Knight in a fatal four-way. Your tribal chief didn't do anything to deserve that. And Nick Aldis has just had enough. Aldis makes a main event for tonight, and it's going to be Orton, Styles, and LA Knight versus Roman Reigns, Jimmy Uso, and Solo Sikoa. Heyman points out the fact that Roman isn't there, and Aldis knows that, and he's like, you're right, I do know that. So you have till the end of the night to find somebody to partner up with, or else it'll be a 3-on-2 handicap match. We then get a Santos Escobar video package where he calls Angel Garza and Humberto Carrillo familia, and then says legado. Is this now officially the new Legado del Fantasma? They haven't announced it yet. We'll have to see how this further develops, but I'm really hoping we can get back to Santos and the Legado because I really enjoyed that in my NXT. We then went to Angel and Humberto taking on Joaquin Wilde and Cruz del Toro from the LWO. And this was just a fantastic, fast-paced matchup. Great lucha action. All four men laid it all out. Angel and Humberto got the win, despite the fact that Carlito came out and tried to get involved. Just good action here. You know, I'm really looking forward to seeing where this goes. We then had Carmelo Hayes in Nick Aldis's office, and they're discussing some business when A-Town Down Under come in. And Waller and Mello go back and forth at it for a little bit. You know, Mello's saying, we can get into it again right now. And Waller's like, well, I already had my match. I've already cooled down. But Theory right here, you can go at it with him. So Aldis books a match, Theory versus Mello. We then go backstage, and Carlito and the LWO are walking, and Carlito gets approached by Heyman, who wants Carlito to join the bloodline for the night. And Carlito basically takes the apple that Heyman tries to tempt him with and walks on. We then get a video from Logan Paul saying that if KO brings his cast to the Rumble, the match is canceled. He talks about how KO's been using it as a weapon, using it as a crutch, and Logan's not going to stand for that. So no cast, or else there's no title shot. Then had a video package of Tyler Bate and Butch in a pub. And Bate can kind of see that Butch is lost and needs to find himself. They reminisce on some British Strong style. And Bate says what he needs is to make his own name. But what name will that be? And of course, everyone's speculating that this is going to be Butch finally going back to being the bruiserweight Pete Dunne. We've seen kind of a slow transformation in his gimmick, in his ring attire, from when he debuted as Butch as part of the Brawling Brutes to now kind of coming to the ring looking more like the OG Pete Dunne from NXT UK. So everyone's just kind of waiting for that final piece to fit into the puzzle and for Pete Dunne to return and for Butch to just die. Bianca versus Bayley. All I have to say is this was an absolute banner. In my personal opinion, it's between this and the Angel Humberto LWO match for match of the night. This was just seeing these two touch in the ring again was absolute magic. If you didn't see it, go back and watch it. That's all I have to say about that. Then had a video of Kevin Owens issuing an open invitation to have Logan Paul next week on the Kevin Owens show. Of course, that's going to be very volatile. I'm sure Nick Aldis will probably have to be there himself and have security. We then had Dakota Kai backstage. We had the entire Damage Control. Bayley walks up to him and is kind of like, where were y'all when I needed you? And Dakota Kai kind of pulls her to the side and is like, the referee was right there. We didn't want to get you disqualified. But then she turns and she starts hyping Bayley up. And it's like, we thought you needed to do it on your own, just like the Royal Rumble. It's every person for themselves. We're not going to be able to help you win the Royal Rumble. It's something you're going to have to do on your own. You can do this. And of course, we know the end game here. It's just how quickly do we get to it? There's heavy speculation that with Trinity's contract supposedly being done with TNA on January 20th, with Mercedes looking to sign somewhere, being ready to go. And even though all the internet journalists swear she's going to AEW, I have this feeling that it's going to be Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, Bailey, and Trinity Naomi versus Asuka, Kairi, Io, Dakota at WrestleMania. I don't know how good Dakota is, but how much more time her injury needs before she can compete. But in a match like that, you can definitely use her sparingly and hide her injury if she's still too seriously injured. We then had Lashley and the Street Profits come out and start cutting a promo, only to be interrupted by Paul Ellering coming up onto the stage, who points up to the Tron, and we get a video package of Karrion Kross, Scarlett, the AOP, and Paul Ellering introducing themselves as the Final Testament. And again, the production here, the way this video package is put together, breaking everybody down and their role in this organization, the stable, chef's kiss. This is going to be fun to watch. And I think that Cross really needs this because he's been seriously struggling since coming back to the company. We then had Pretty Deadly backstage with Paul Heyman, and Pretty Deadly kind of wanting to be Paul Heyman guys, looking to be accepted. But he only needs one person, not two people. We then had a Carmelo Hayes video package, kind of hyping him up and introducing him to the SmackDown, fans, letting the fans know why Melo is him. And then we go backstage and we see Lashley and the Street Profits with Paul Heyman. And Heyman trying to get Bobby Lashley to be that person. Lashley wants no part of it. Says the only reason he wants to be in a ring with Roman Reigns is standing across the ring from Roman Reigns. We then had Carmelo Hayes versus Austin Theory. And this was a good, fast-paced, excuse me, this was some good, fast-paced action. I was really into the match. There was a little bit sloppiness throughout, if I'm being honest, and I'm not sure if it was Melo not being ready. I'm not sure if it was Melo having nerves. I'm not sure if it wasn't Theory's fault. But there were definitely some moves that were executed throughout the entirety of the match that came off sloppy. And then came the way the match ended. They were up on the turnbuckle. The announce team said it looked like Theory was going for a Spanish fly or something. And Theory ended up dropping himself and Melo on their head and necks. Theory definitely looked like he got the worst of it. Hopefully both men will be okay. Hopefully neither man is too seriously injured. But this was just devastating because with everything going on in NXT right now, with the Trick Mello thing, with the fact that Trick and Mello are supposed to be in the Dusty Classic on Tuesday, like there's a lot of stuff that Mello is needed for, and hopefully this doesn't take him out of action. If anything, I hope that this is going to sound kind of weird, but I hope this was planned in a sense to kind of help further the Trick Mello story. But just need to be careful. We need to make sure Theory and Mello are okay. two really young careers that could be ruined because of something like this. Then have Paul Heyman, Jimmy Uso, and Solo Sikoa backstage. Paul saying there's no third man. Jimmy is worried, and Solo's like, I'm not. Main event match is Randy Orton, LA Knight, and AJ Styles versus the Bloodline, and Orton is ambushed and attacked during his entrance. Taken backstage, the match begins as a standard 2-on-2 tag team match. The action is really good, back and forth. Each team getting the upper hand at one point, and then, of course, as soon as the Bloodline appears to be in control, Orton's music hits and he comes back. The baby faces get the victory here. Standard. Standard finish. The good guys get the big comeuppance at the end. It was a solid match, though. Solid match, solid show. Again, I'd probably give this one about a B. Mainly because of the mellow theory thing. But other than that, this was a solid SmackDown. Y'all are being awful quiet in the chat room. Curious to know what you guys think. Let me know. Going to take another quick commercial, then we'll be back to discuss AEW Collision. And we are back. Moving on to AEW Collision. This show began with the Cope Open and Adam Copeland issuing an open challenge, which is accepted by Lee Moriarty. Fun match designed to make Moriarty look good, even in defeat. Definitely a few opportunities there where you thought Moriarty was going to get the upper hand and defeat the legendary Adam Copeland. However, it wasn't his night. Post-match, Adam gets on the microphone and reminds Christian Cage that he's coming for his scrawny ass. Now, let me just say right here, this is going to be a theme for very much the majority of Collision, where you kind of knew going in who was going to win, but there were multiple opportunities where you thought that titles would change or the underdog would get the victory here. And I definitely feel that they relied on that too much. But I also feel that in most of the matches, it was done very well because that suspension of belief was definitely there. And that was most evident in this next match where the Mogul Embassy defended the Ring of Honor 6-man titles against Lance Archer and the Righteous. And this was another fantastic match, and the Righteous looked really good here. I was seriously hoping they were going to dethrone the Mogul Embassy, get some new champs, but it wasn't meant to be. Mogul Embassy retains, and post-match, Prince Nana issues a challenge to Bullet Club Gold. Now, after hearing that challenge, I'm glad that the Righteous and Lance Archer didn't get the belts. Because if you think about it, you've had the Acclaimed and Bullet Club Gold kind of coming together the last couple weeks and proposing the idea of a mega faction. The Bang Bang Scissor Gang, as it was kind of jokingly named last week. So if you've got the Acclaimed with the AEW Trios titles, and Jay White and the Guns with the Ring of Honor Trios titles, you've already got all 6 men with gold. Then you can start looking at some individual gold. Whether it's Jay White going after the AEW title, the Ring of Honor title, the International title, the Ring of Honor TV title. Juice Robinson when he comes back from injury. Where's he going to fit in and all that? Could be some very fun booking here. So I'm glad now that Archer and the Righteous didn't take the titles, but in the heat of the moment, I definitely wanted it. Lexi Nair was then backstage with Preston Vance. And Roderick Strong and the Kingdom. The Undisputed Kingdom came and interrupted. Preston issues a challenge to Roddy for next week. Now, I'm guessing that Preston Vance is getting this title opportunity because of the fact that he won his 8-man tag match. And the same thing with Anna Jay. Those matches are on Battle of the Belts, and we'll get there, but it's Preston Vance versus Orange Cassidy for the International Championship, and Julia Hart versus Anna Jay for the TBS title. And I think they're maybe giving them those matches because they were the successful, ones in their respective matches on Dynamite at Daly's place. It's the only thing I can think of that makes sense as to why they're getting title matches. At least why Preston Vance is getting one. We then had Dustin Rhodes versus Willie Mack, and this was a big match for me on a personal level. It's no secret here across the multiverse of media how much we all respect the Rhodes family. I've been privileged over the years to meet the American Dream. I've met Dustin during his Gold Dust days, and I've met Cody. Willie Mack, on the other hand, is somebody that we literally come up from nothing. Like, we saw this guy when he was hustling to get booked on shows, when he would have to walk and bus from South Central Los Angeles to Orange County, and would show up at the facility at 1 o'clock in the afternoon for a show that wasn't scheduled till 8 o'clock, because that's how hungry he was for this, how dedicated he was for this. We've shown photos on open mic night of me and my daughter's mom and Stat Boy at Disneyland with Willie Mack, because he was that close to us. We were getting him into the park when Stat Boy worked there. So on a personal level, this match was really important to me, and it was fantastic. Willie really got the opportunity to shine here against Dustin. Sportsmanship was shown at the beginning of the match and at the end of the match. At the end of the match, Dustin embraced Willie in the middle of the ring, and they hugged. Of course, Dustin got the pinfall here because as of yet, I haven't seen a Willie Mack is All Elite graphic. So you're not going to give a guy that's not under full contract a victory over somebody with a legacy of Dustin Rhodes. That's just not going to happen. But still, damn good match. So proud of my buddy for this one, and hopefully it'll lead to a Willie Mack is All Elite graphic coming in the not so distant future. We then had Bullet Club Gold backstage, and they accepted Prince Nana's challenge. Hook arrived at the facility, but he wasn't scheduled, so what does he want? Backstage, Renee and Dustin are interrupted by the patriarchy, and Dustin issues a challenge to Christian Cage for the TNT title next week. We then had the Hangman Adam Page versus JD Drake of the Workhorsemen, and the big boy really brought it to the Hangman here. Wasn't enough to get it done. Buckshot Lariat wins the match, but this honestly was one of the first matches I've seen of Hangman in the last year or so where I was okay with the outcome. Again, JD Drake is kind of an enhancement talent. The Workhorsemen are what they are as a tag team. Not really going to get a victory here for him over the Hangman, over a former AEW champion. But this was a good match. That brings us to the moment that everybody was waiting for on Collision. The debut of the virtuosa, Deonna Purrazzo. Long may she fucking reign, as she took on Red Velvet in her debut. And for Collision, this was match of the night right here. Red Velvet was the perfect opponent to pick to introduce the virtuosa to the AEW crowd. Queen's Gambit got the submission victory. Again, this was just a classic encounter here. It was hold for hold, counter for counter, some good chain wrestling in the beginning. Highly recommend you guys go back and watch this. This match and the Bayley Bianca match from SmackDown were probably two of my favorite matches from the entire weekend. So go and do yourself a favor and give them a look. We then had a squash match where Hook took on Kevin Matthews and made him tap to the Red Rum in like under 3 minutes. This was just okay. I'm not a fan of squash matches. Y'all should be aware of that by now. This match only served two purposes. Number one, he's trying to build the feud up to Samoa Joe. Number two, people asking on the internet regarding the Jinder Mahal thing, who the fuck is Hook? This is who Hook is. He just made this dude tap in under 3 minutes. Granted, it was an enhancement talent. You know, Hook didn't make Swerve Strickland tap out in under 3 minutes. He didn't make Kenny Omega tap out in under 3 minutes. He made Kevin Matthews. Just saying. Main event was Daniel Garcia and FTR versus the House of Black. And this was a knockdown, drag-out fight. Just absolute barn burner of a match. Some people may consider this match from Collision as the match of the night. And I wouldn't blame them if they did. But being such a proponent in trying to promote and change people's opinions on women's wrestling, going all the way back to episodes of a Hardy Conversation from like 2009, 2010. That's why I preferred the Virtuosa match. But this was an amazing match as well. You had Danny Garcia and FTR get the victory. Or no, excuse me, the House of Black got the victory here. I would have preferred to have seen Danny and the FTR get the win. But it just kind of was what it was in this instance. Going to do one more commercial break, and then we will come back to discuss Battle of the Belts.
3, 2, 1.
So that is all of the updated watch-alongs that we will be doing, much like Battle of the Belts Collision was. So much good stuff in store, kicking off with the Rumble, going all the way to the Bash in Berlin in August. And that's just the stuff that we know so far. So much more stuff will be added to that schedule as it gets announced. So just be on the lookout because we're constantly updating that video. So finally, Battle of the Belts 9 kicked off with Big Bill and Ricky Starks defending the AEW tag titles against Les Sex Gods. There wasn't even really an opportunity to do like a video or anything for Battle of the Belts. Like we immediately switched from Collision over, and they're already fighting in the parking lot. It has already begun. This was a Pier 6 brawl. This was war. This was sheer brutality. Just the way a street fight should be. They battled from the outside of the arena into catering, onto the entrance ramp, the ringside area. Sammy climbed up this ladder and was going for, I think he was going for a swanton bomb onto Ricky Starks. And he just crashed through the entryway. And I was like, holy shit, tell me this kid didn't just kill himself. It was crazy. Konosuke Takeshita and Powerhouse Hobbs got involved on behalf of the Don Callis family because of their personal feud with Omega and Jericho. Champs retained. That definitely was a disappointment to me, and I'll get into that at the very end here. But this match right here was the best match of Battle of the Belts, bar none. I do feel like the match order for this show was out of order. And again, I'll get more in depth into that later on. Went straight from that to Julia Hart versus Anna Jay for the TBS title. And I just felt so bad for these women having to try to follow that. There's no way you're following that. None. All of the energy has just been sucked out of the arena. It just serious uphill battle for these two. It was a good match. It deserves to be watched and given the opportunity because it really was good. You just weren't going to get the crowd response that it needed following that. Bad placement. We then had a backstage segment with Sanjay Dutt, Jay Lethal, Jeff and Karen Jarrett. And Sanjay's trying to get everyone onto the same page. And Jeff Jarrett tells Jay Lethal that he's off the team. At this point, Satnam Singh shows up. He hasn't been around for a minute. Tries to offer Jay Lethal some food. And Jay Lethal shoves it away. So are we seeing Jeff Jarrett and crew finally disband? Or is there any way we can save this? Personally, I like them as a team. I really do. But at the same time, I can understand the need to move on. Main event for Battle of the Belts was Orange Cassidy versus Preston Vance, and this was another solid match. And the crowd was into it a little bit, but there still just wasn't the energy in the building after that big old street fight. Just none. You know, Orange Cassidy retained over Preston Vance. Let's get that out of the way. And if I forgot to mention it, Julia Hart retained over Anna Jay. So all the belts stayed where they were supposed to be. So that basically takes care of Battle of the Belts very simply. So let me do this real quick. Because I feel like this is something that really needs to be gotten into. First of all, match order for Battle of the Belts should have been Orange Cassidy versus Preston Vance, Julia Hart versus Anna Jay, then the street fight. Because the street fight came in hot off the heels of FTR versus the House of Black, which was already a slugfest and an intense match. So you didn't want to put two matches with all of that energy and excitement back to back. That was bad booking right there. So it should have been Orange Cassidy and Preston Vance, Julia Hart, Anna Jay, and then the street fight. Then you would have given a little bit more energy towards some of these other matches. You know, they would have got some of the energy and the crowd response that they deserved. And the second thing I want to touch on is the fact that we constantly have these Battle of the Belts and titles don't change hands. I think a statistic was researched on Saturday night, and we discovered that there have been no title changes on Battle of the Belts since Battle of the Belts 2, when Sammy Guevara defeated Scorpio Sky for the TNT title. And that's a shame. I honestly thought that Jericho and Sammy deserved to get the tag titles here. I was waiting for them to win the tag titles. There is really no point of doing Battle of the Belts if we don't have titles change hands at least occasionally. One title change in 9 episodes is ridiculous. Now, I said on open mic night, and I'll state it again here. I feel it should be a 1 every 5 ratio. So if at Battle of the Belts 10, a title changes hands, I'll take a step back, because that'll be 2 title changes in 10 episodes, 1 in 5. I'd like to see it a little bit more frequently than that. You don't have to do a title change every time. But you're going to start losing viewers on Battle of the Belts if you don't start doing more title changes there. You can't just wait for pay-per-views. You've got to do title changes on TV. You've got to give the illusion that anything can happen at any time. Why am I going to pay money to go to see a Dynamite show if I know that there's not going to be a title change? Why am I going to pay money to go see a Collision show if I know nobody's going to win a title? You know? I may as well save my money, and then whenever a pay-per-view comes to town, just go to the pay-per-view, because there's a better chance of seeing a title change on a pay-per-view. Because for whatever reason, TK philosophy that you got to do title changes on big shows. And I disagree with that. I firmly disagree with that. You need to have the illusion that anything can happen at any time. That's just my personal thoughts, though. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Again, y'all have been pretty quiet today. Maybe you're as tired as I am. So I will just kind of call it a spade today. I've ran all the commercials that I have to run, so I'm just going to go straight into the shills. If you missed it on Saturday, go back and check out our coverage of the return of TNA as Jeff Meacham and Noah Foster called the action for Hard to Kill. Go back into the archives and check out the coverage of AEW Collision and Battle of the Belts. Myself, James Hebert, and Walter Cruz were all on the call for that one. It was a really fun show. The very first ever Multiverse of Media watch-along simulcast, as both those shows were happening at the same time. Also go back in the archives and check out the 2nd anniversary episode of Open Mic Night, which took to the airwaves immediately following Hard to Kill. Lots of good stuff there, highlights and whatnot. I just said the same thing, Walter. I just said the exact same thing. But lots of good, fun highlights. We discussed the Tony Khan temper tantrums of last week. We discussed the rebirth of TNA a little bit. So make sure you go back in the archives and you check all those things out again. Hard to Kill, Collision Battle of the Belts coverage, and Open Mic Night. Make sure you guys tune in tomorrow for Stat Boy Sports Bar. Time TBD right now. I am supposed to be stepping into the producer's chair, but before I can give a full-on commitment to that, I need to make sure someone else can get the kids from school. That way the show can go on at 3 o'clock Pacific, 6 o'clock Eastern like normal. If I can't get confirmation from that, then the show will probably be at 4:30 Pacific, 7:30 Eastern, just so that I can make sure I get home in time, get the kids, get home. Either that or I'm going to have to see if James Hebert can step into the producer's chair and tap in and do the production for the sports bar. He's done it before in the past, so he kind of knows what Stat Boy, Jeff, and I really like to do. And he may be available to do that, so we'll have to see. But time TBD, but Stat Boy Sports Bar will be on the air tomorrow. That's going to about wrap it up for this morning. Make sure you guys tune in tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel as I discussed tonight's episode of Monday Night Raw. Thank you guys for joining me and tuning in, and I will see you guys tomorrow.
The Jeff Meacham Network's Multiverse of Media. For over 15 years, the recognized symbol of excellence and the standard bearer in coverage of sports and entertainment.
Thank you, JJ. Appreciate you.